CBC News has learned some troubling information about the treatment of women in the federal prison system. Female prisoners may be getting over-medicated and in some cases dangerously so. The CBC's Susan Bonner now with the details of our joint investigation with Canadian Press.
She was a minor when convicted of a serious crime, so her identity is protected by law. In federal prison, she witnessed a drug-infused world. Prisoners routinely prescribed powerful drugs, including antipsychotics, licensed to treat severe conditions like schizophrenia, but used in Canadian jails as a sleep aid. On day one, she was offered quetiapine, known by the brand name Seroquel.
Seroquel was known as the sleeping pill in the prison system. It seems far easier to give a prescription than to help someone address past trauma or help them find a different way to manage their time.
A joint CBC News Canadian Press investigation has learned that 2 out of every 3 women in federal prisons use powerful mood-altering drugs, including quetiapine. That number up dramatically over a decade when a 42% rate was considered problematic by Correctional Service Canada, which now won't talk about the new statistics or the way it prescribes drugs in prisons.
The antipsychotic drugs that are so often being given to people to help them sleep, I mean, that's just bad medicine.
Dr. David Gerling says the toxic side effects of drugs like quetiapine are well known.
The drug can kill people if used inappropriately, and especially when you use it in large numbers of people. It's inevitable that someone's going to be harmed and someone's going to be killed from the indiscriminate use of drugs like this.
Indeed, this memo we obtained reveals until 2011 at least federal prisons were using quetiapine for unapproved treatment. The memo lays out new criteria for the drug. Used to treat the illness it was licensed for is the directive, nothing more. CSC will not say what was behind that directive, writing only it was part of a regular review. In the U.S., the same drug has been banned from prisons in several states.
We see women who develop substance abuse issues.
The head of an advocacy group for women in prison says the warnings about over-medication have been growing for years.
Oftentimes, the biggest complaint we have from people working in the prisons, staff, is that women are very emotional. And so if you dull down the emotions by medicating them, you end up with a situation where the chemical restraints keep them from being a challenge.
The federal correctional investigator has launched a probe into how prescription drugs are used and monitored in prisons.
We want to make sure that prescription drugs are being used appropriately. We want to make sure that the legal requirement that the Correctional Service of Canada has to provide health care to an acceptable professional standard is in fact being done, and we can't do that unless we get the information.
The Elizabeth Fry Society also wants the Auditor General to investigate, to lay out the long-term effects on the female prisoners and the cost to society, where the women will eventually return, as well as to find out why federal officials couldn't immediately account for precisely what was happening with these drugs. Susan Bonner, CBC News, Toronto.